Hello, everyone. My name is Miss Kit, and today I have the privilege of walking you through the understanding of the process of change. Now, change, if we look at it first from a scientific perspective, we have this idea of stimulus and response. So, in stimulus and response, the stimulus is something that has been presented to us in our environment, and that stimulus could be a tragic event, a loss of a loved one. It also could be a more natural or environmental disaster, such as our current situation with the pandemic. So this stimulus creates a response in our emotional state sometimes, and it forces us in some way to change. And sometimes this change is unexpected, meaning it's out of our control. And sometimes we expect the change is in our control. However, whatever the change is, the stimulus causes us to react. And sometimes we react by embracing it. And other times we resist the change. In resisting this change, we ask ourselves this question about why is this happening to us? And it is an age-old question. Why is this happening? Or why has this tragedy impacted my life? So it causes us to have some anxiety over it, and it affects or impacts our mental and physical well-being to the point where the applied action to try to resolve it seems limited and we feel a little bit stuck. However, we have this part of us too that desires to seek out change. And once this event or tragedy happens, maybe we try our best to look at it in a positive way and choose the direction for our lives and maybe choose our attitudes about how we're going to change maybe some things about our life. So in this process, we ask ourselves these questions as well. But the question that maybe why is this happening cannot be the question that we ask. Instead, we ask a series of questions such as, what do I do now that this tragedy or this event has happened? How can I change my mindset as a result of this stimulus in my life? How will it impact me and others? And how will I get through this adversity, if alone or with my family? So if we embrace this change, it gives us this ability to choose our path, and we get to choose our attitude and maybe reflect on some of the things that have happened as a result of this stimulus coming into our life. And I love this quote from Viktor Frankl. He says, "Everything can be taken from a man, but one thing, the last of the human freedoms, to choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances, to choose one's own way." And looking at Dr. Frankl or Viktor Frankl, we also have to look at his life experiences and the direction or why he's stating this information for us. And he is a gentleman that lived through the Nazi concentration camps during World War II. He struggled immensely in his life, and he struggled mostly with what is the meaning of life. And before concentration camp life, he lived a very good life with his wife, and he was a psychologist, and he studied and he even termed this concept called logotherapy, which gave us this idea of logos meaning reason, or that we got to choose our attitude towards things. And in this logotherapy, it was really the search for meaning in one's life. So such questions as, why are we faced with such immense trials and adversity? And during this time back at the camps, he experienced the same question when he lost his wife, unborn child, and many of his other family members to the death camps. And during this time of suffering from all this loss, he determined that he got to choose his attitude. And this new outlook, this new perspective of life really changed his focus. And so instead of wallowing maybe in his despair or trying to figure out why this has happened, because maybe he thought he was a good person and bad things don't happen to good people, he really stopped and thought about, wow, every day I get to wake up, I'm alive. And he started reflecting more on the beautiful sunrise or the clouds that floated over him. And then this shift of behavior or this attitude changed, and he started enjoying his job in the camp, even though it was burdensome and difficult. So he purposely chose how he would respond even in the midst of all the death and destruction around him. So it takes us to Sisyphus, who was punished by the gods, and his burden was not light. He had to push this boulder up a hill for all eternity. And this boulder, which was very burdensome, is one of our challenges. So it becomes an analogy for us. One of our trials is sometimes we feel that we'll never make it to the top, that the challenge or the stimulus is too great. And with each step, the boulder seems to get bigger and more hard to rise to the top. So this challenge does the same for us. It's too immense. We'll never make it out. The change is too difficult for us. But last, when we're asked to reflect on what that event meant to us, when maybe we reach the top, we have this ability to think about some of the other challenges we are faced with, and that life throws us many boulders to maybe struggle to reach the top. And that in that challenge, when we overcome one of those challenges, we feel successful, or maybe a little pride that we were able to overcome it. And when we reflect on it, maybe it didn't seem as immense, and it maybe just the change in our mindset helped us. And to go back to what Viktor Frankl was saying, is that he gave us a guidepost. And in this, we have this idea of self-discovery. So we often ask, who am I? What will I become as a result of this change? And what if I resist this change in my life? Will I regret it later? And how am I going to make it out on my own if the challenge or the change seems so burdensome? And then to go back to what Viktor Frankl was saying again was about choice. So the second part about choice is that in changing our situation, or changing maybe how we view that situation or that stimulus that has arose in our life, we also change our attitude towards it. So instead of looking at how immense it is, maybe if we tackle some of the smaller parts of that task or that boulder, we're able to change our attitude or our mindset about it. And remembering that we all have our own unique qualities. And he really reflected on this ability to be creative, and that in our creativity, we experience our own uniqueness. And this uniqueness is our challenge, and knowing that none of us are the same, and that we're all made up differently, and that we all are faced with different challenges in our life that kind of shape the person or our expectations or desires in life. But if we become victimized or stay in that victim role, that we get stuck and we do not look at all the possibilities that lie ahead for us. We don't look at our internal strengths that are within each of us and our ability to create and form lasting relationships, maybe with our friends or our parents, or even those who are willing to advocate for us. So in building those relationships too, we don't feel so stuck or isolated from the world or from our communities. And it might change some of our anxiety that we have or our mindset to determine how we're going to face that boulder in our life. And so then we get to this idea of our responsibility. that we do have that freedom to choose who and what we want for our lives. Maybe we can't change all the things in our environment, but we can also look at it and shift our perspective in changing our mindset and maybe making small changes so that it impacts our future in a positive way. And so once we get there, we realize this self-discovery and that change in oneself. Yeah, it might be difficult, but the idea is that we are not alone in the battle and that all of us have challenges in our life. And discovering more about who we are and what we want will ultimately help us discover maybe a clearer path for ourselves and making maybe wiser decisions for what we want now or what we want in our future. So now you are going to be listening to 4 of your peers who also faced some challenges within their lives and how they maybe embraced this challenge to experience something new for their life. And some of them, you'll see that there was an opportunity for them. Others, there was maybe some resistance to change at first. And then even others that they allowed this challenge in their life to make some progress in other directions, or maybe it brought some new opportunities into their life. So as you're listening to these 4 individuals speak to their challenges in their life, I would like you to maybe notate or take out something to write with and answer these questions. What was or is the challenge the student experienced or endured that shaped his or her new mindset? The second one is, what was the initial reaction and the overall response to change? And then the third is, what positive benefits impacted their lives from embracing their awareness of what needed to be changed?
In 2018, I had various personal events that impacted the course of my life greatly. Within 10 months, my parents got divorced, my grandma passed away, and both of my great-grandparents passed away as well. As one can imagine, this was a very hard time for my family. I would say that that year as a whole was the biggest adversity my family and I have ever come across. We relied on each other heavily. Of course, after each of these situations, there's an initial moment where you just sit there and you think, where do I go from here? And what now? Still, I knew that I wasn't going to be sad forever. I wouldn't let myself be sad forever. I learned that talking about my feelings rather than keeping them inside was helpful. I learned to recognize that some of these things were out of my control, and realizing that helped me recover. These new strategies helped me deal with things such as anxiety, shape me as a person, and have changed the way I look at life. I stress less about things that are out of my control, and I focus on the things that I can. I overcame these obstacles by reminding myself that better things lay ahead. This affected my academics by making me more driven as well as more motivated to do better. Every time I didn't get the results that I desired, I went back, analyzed what went wrong, and I fixed it. Even if I didn't put that much effort into it, I tried to learn what I did wrong so I could better myself in the future. Whether the setback be personal or academic, it lights a fire under me to improve myself rather than wallow in my sadness. I realized that when I stumble in my classes, I could use this to do better in the future, similarly to what I did in my personal life. By applying these tactics to my school life, I became better and more adaptive to my surroundings. I react more positively to things when they don't go my way. I strongly believe that hardships and mistakes are valuable because they can help me grow and motivate me to do better. My academic achievement has remained consistent or better since that year that impacted me, and it makes me proud to know that despite it being so difficult, it changed me for the better. Death and divorce are such heavy topics and hard to deal with, but I handled them the best I could, and I used my past to make conscious, educated decisions about my future. I anchor myself in the belief that everything happens for a reason, and consequently, my attitude shifted to become more positive. I do my best to focus on what's happening in the moment instead of kicking myself over things that have happened in the past. Since then, I haven't forgotten what happened. I simply reflect upon the past with fondness and look to my future with hopefulness. As this chapter of high school closes and my life continues, I enter the next parts of my life with a positive outlook. Thank you.
My name is Rishika, and I'm sure my story is going to be quite underwhelming in comparison to that of my peers, but that's because it's about a shift in perspective instead of a larger life-sweeping change. Essentially, I'm here today because I'm on track to be this year's valedictorian, and I'm sure that many of you have similar ambitions in your life because maybe you're partly pressured by your family to live up to their expectations of you. But as for me, I am the non-genius in a family full of geniuses. My brother, for instance, was valedictorian and he got a full scholarship to college, and so did my sister. So that's a really tough act for me to follow, and I have not done too great of a job doing so. For example, I'll be honest, I had a tad of a mental breakdown yesterday because there's a program called QuestBridge that I've been applying through for college, and it offers full rides to all these great schools, Brown, Yale, all the big names that I'm sure you've heard of. And I wasn't even a finalist. So what I do instead is I watch reaction videos of the people who did get in, and I watch them laugh and cry in joy, and I'm crying alongside them, albeit for somewhat different reasons, all the while thinking that could have been me, like that should have been me. But what I have to keep reminding myself is that none of this matters too much. No one college is going to enhance or detract from me, so much so if my passion and my ambition and my drive are absent. We all have to stop thinking that our lives depend upon a single factor, because they don't. And you guys might be familiar with Robert Frost's poem, The Road Not Taken, where the speaker says, "I chose the road less traveled by, and that has made all the difference." But what you might not know is that Frost was being sarcastic there. What has truly made all the difference for me is recognizing that it's the journey, not the destination, that truly counts. And I won't pretend to be perfect and say that I'm doing this, trying to become valedictorian, wholly for the sake of learning. Part of me is doing that for that little number one on my transcript, because having an external sign to track the effectiveness of your efforts is always rewarding. It's also way easier to perceive than your internal self-satisfaction, which is likely to be clouded by sentiments like doubt and self-inadequacy and all that jazz. But that number one really won't mean much after I finish high school. Rather, the memories and the lessons you glean, academic and otherwise, that's what's invaluable. And I'm not trying to discourage you from shooting for valedictorian or whatever goal or ambition you set yourself after, but do it with the right intent. Because trust me, you don't want to peak in high school. You always want to have something to work towards. For me, becoming valedictorian was less about being the best out of everyone than it was being the best of myself. Cheesy, I'm sure, but I found that I did my best when I genuinely enjoyed what I was learning, because we tend to work hard at what we love. So let your passions and your will and let that drive you, but always keep in mind that the external result or reward, whether it be a number one on your transcript or a hot boyfriend or admission to an Ivy League, all these external superficialities will never surmount the satisfaction of working hard to fulfill an internalized and genuine desire. And if you follow this philosophy of intrinsic motivation, the results will come naturally. And I know without a doubt that all of you are capable of that. Thank you for your time.
Hi, my name is Raya, and my life full of changes. I born in Iraq, which is world country, and in 2 years old we moved to Egypt, and after that, after 1 year, we moved to Syria, and after 1 year we moved back to Iraq. In 2014, my dad decided to move to America. He left us 5 siblings with mom alone in Iraq. And at that time, we got to grow up and take responsibilities from my mom. And in last year, in 18 July, we came to America. And within 2 weeks, I started school. I didn't have time to realize that I left my country, and I went to a country far away from it, with a country with different culture, different language, different religion. It was so hard at the time, but when I went to school, I quickly understood everything. When I finally had friends and adapt to everything over there, I was transferred to another school, which is Pacifica, and I got to start everything all over again. I went first time I went to school, tears in my eyes, but I said, talking to myself, I said, instead of crying, I got to develop myself. I got to focus on my language, because in order to progress anywhere, you got to master their language. I didn't have time to cry, and I started reading books, listening to music, watch movies. I went to tutorials. I stayed after school, even through pandemic, when quarantine, coronavirus, people say corona stopped everything, but for me, I took advantage of staying at home. Beside watching more movies and reading more books, I taught myself how to type on the Chromebook computers, because I didn't know that. I taught myself that because I saw everyone can type really quick and fast, but me, I did not. I don't like staying in the back. I want to be everything or nothing. Also, my self-confidence has increased. I haven't loved myself before as I do now. People said, "Oh my God, you're so calm." But I was not. I'm still not. But I was not confident to speak in front of anyone. But now I do. I can speak. I can even throw jokes. I didn't want to put all of my energy on crying or complaining. And instead that, I took it to develop myself. And here I am. I'm proud of myself.
My parents came here a long time ago with my mom and sister, long before I was born here. They struggled, and they always wanted me to learn from their struggles and understand what it meant to struggle. My dad was the best. He was a quintessential example of someone who rose above from where he started and sacrificed everything for his family. He was always working, and he would apologize to me that I couldn't spend more time with me, but I didn't think anything of it, because I knew he loved me, and I knew all the work he was putting in was for us. When the first rounds of COVID hit sometime last year, late last year, I should say, early this year, sorry, my dad got infected. Well, our whole family got infected. We each had varying degrees of, symptoms, but my dad took the hardest, and after 2 weeks, he passed away in the hospital. It was extremely difficult for my whole family. For me, I couldn't grieve like everyone else. I just couldn't. I didn't want to, and I just felt like I couldn't. I couldn't just break down crying. His death threw me into a sort of a frenzy where I couldn't. All I wanted to do was be active, do something that was productive, just on the move. Something tragic that completely changed everything happened, and I didn't feel like I could just stop. I felt like I needed to just go somewhere, do something. So I distracted myself, making sure the garden looked better than it had in months, trying to learn Italian, taking more time playing guitar, just doing things that I remember whenever he would see me doing, it would put a smile on his face. Just things that I deemed or thought of as productive. I see now that his death kind of made me realize or want to do more, experience more, not just in maybe a get good grades sense, but truly do more with life. There's so many things that we can achieve, and just I wanted to search for meaning, as if his death just threw me into a search for meaning. I want to find meaning and purpose. So I went out my way to find things that gave me a sense of meaning, and in a way, that's kind of how I coped through it. The initial challenge at first was dealing with loss. But looking at it now, whenever I would engage in those activities and those things that I wanted to learn at or get better at, whenever I was engaged in something that felt like it gave me a sense of meaning or purpose, it was a way trying to live up to the legacy he left. he worked so hard. He will always be the greatest example, the greatest role model I could ever have for hard work and sacrifice. All I could do is just dedicate the rest of my life to doing things that will in some way validate all his sacrifices and love that he gave all of us.
So now that you were able to take notes and to reflect on the challenges that these 4 individuals endured in their life and how they embraced this change, now it's your turn to reflect on some of the challenges that maybe you face in your life and how maybe you would like to embrace those changes. And I wanted to remind you of something that Viktor Frankl said as well. He gives us a formula. He says the formula for despair comes from when we suffer and choose not to see the meaning in the suffering. Therefore, despair equals suffering with the absence of meaning. So if we're suffering and we're in this fixed mindset and we're not willing to maybe take a step back and to see things from maybe a different perspective, and maybe we can't really envision ourselves in this different way that we've always seen ourselves before. But when we actually maybe take 10 minutes to clear our minds or maybe try a different direction in our life, we're actually taking a step back to refresh our perspective and maybe to see all the possibilities that lie ahead for us. So the last thing that I'm going to challenge you with is the choice is yours. So from this point, and when you're thinking about all of the aspects that you've learned through this course, and now, I would like you to think about this. What is a stimulus or something that's in my life that is hindering my path or my journey? What can I do right now to change the direction and open that inner eye, as Wordsworth mentions, to see all of life as a series of events that we are constantly responding to. And if we use our unique creativity, we open ourselves to endless possibilities. So what is that maybe challenge that you're faced with? And how are you going to make the steps to better your life or better your direction so that it's not causing you to feel stuck anymore? So I'm hoping that you are able to share this information, and I'm hoping that you are able to utilize some of these aspects from hearing your peers within the challenges that they faced and maybe embracing that change yourself.
I hope you had the time of your life.